Mr. Patterson, are you ready to present AB 1501?
I am. Madam Chair and members, thank you for the opportunity of presenting the California High-Speed Rail Funding Accountability Act. Let me give a brief introduction and some background, and then the rationale for presenting the bill to you in the hopes that it will earn your support. First, in order to understand the complexities and the challenges, but then also for the opportunity of passing this along to the Appropriations Committee for the opportunity of a thorough and clear financial and fiscal analysis that I believe is necessary as well. The California High-Speed Rail Funding Accountability Act would prohibit the California High-Speed Rail Authority from using federal funds for the high-speed rail project until state money has been expressly and explicitly appropriated by the legislature and approved by the courts. In 2012, the legislature enacted SB 1029, which appropriated $4.7 billion in state bond funds and $3.3 billion in federal high-speed rail funds to initiate the high-speed rail construction project. A year later, Superior Court Judge Michael Kenney ruled that the High-Speed Rail Authority had not yet met the legal requirements to spend Proposition 1A bond funds for high-speed rail construction. Madam Chairman and members, in their response, the High-Speed Rail Authority did not dispute this finding, but argued that even if it cannot access or spend Proposition 1A bond funds, it can proceed with construction using federal funds based on an assumption. And that assumption is that the legislature would appropriate general fund dollars at any time. To this day, neither the legislature nor the voters have approved the direct expenditure of state general fund dollars for high-speed rail construction. And yet, the High-Speed Rail Authority continues to operate under this assumption that money could be pulled from the budget to match federal funds at any time. The fact is, members, this legislature has already appropriated billions of dollars for this project. However, until the court rules that the authority is operating under the law, they will not be able to use those funds. There is a consequence to this, because in addition to that, whether we like it or not, the authority is, as we speak, obligating this legislature and the taxpayers of the state of California to billions more dollars in state funds by proceeding with this project using solely federal funds that will ultimately have no choice, members, but for you to match dollar for dollar. These are dollars that may otherwise be designated for purposes like education, health care, or public safety. The California High-Speed Rail Funding Accountability Act would reaffirm the will of the legislature and the voters by prohibiting the High-Speed Rail Authority from using federal funds to begin construction of the high-speed rail project until two significant hurdles are met. State money has been explicitly appropriated by the legislature and approved for use by the courts. Today, members, I have with me friends from the Citizens for California High-Speed Rail Accountability, the Kings County Farm Bureau, and others who wish to provide additional testimony.
Thank you. Proceed, please.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and fellow committee members. My name is Aaron Fukuda, and I'm the co-chairman of the Citizens for California High-Speed Rail Accountability. I want to thank you on behalf of the committee for allowing us to address this important piece of legislation. Assembly Bill 1501 has been drafted as a safety net for the role of legislature in developing the California High-Speed Rail project. I and many members of our group have often been accused of trying to kill the high-speed rail project, or we're simply NIMBYs. If you were to spend a few hours with us, you would find that we are not intent on killing high-speed rail, but more so trying to ensure that the project complies with all applicable laws, including Proposition 1A. If you're going to ask people to give up their livelihoods, their dreams, and their property, we must make sure as a state that we do this under all applicable laws. The success or failure of high-speed rail in California lies in the hands of the California High-Speed Rail Authority. Unfortunately, Proposition 1A, fiscal responsibility, and purely good engineering and science have been set aside for a green project, a jobs generator, or whatever the next economic fad will be. In this fashion, California High-Speed Rail Authority has become a used high-speed rail system team, trying to get the public to buy off on something that is old by making it look like something that it is not. Some of the misrepresented facts regarding high-speed rail. The blended system being proposed today does not yield a dedicated high-speed rail system. The project will most likely in its current form have more environmental damage to our state than benefit. The jobs generator has only been sold as those that attribute to high-speed rail. The fiscal disaster that will come afterwards, the taking of funds from other programs, what jobs will be lost, what businesses will be lost or relocated out of state when the high-speed rail comes through. The authority has misled legislature on many different avenues. In September, they indicated in September 2012 they must get construction underway. We are now sitting in 2014 and construction is not underway. What happened in that misrepresentation? They misrepresented that they are currently sitting with private investors. None of those have come to the table. Each mismanaged step that the authority takes puts high-speed rail not only in jeopardy, but also puts state funds at risk. You as legislators do not have the luxury of disappearing into the myriad of consultants and lobbyists when the project spirals out of control. The only mechanism you have is to control the purse by which the authority must ask for funds. Those funds are the public's funds, and they must be watched with caution when those asking cannot follow the law. We support AB 1501 and Assemblyman Patterson in his quest to ensure that the California High-Speed Rail project does not brand you with a legacy of fiscal disaster that will be harder to undo than to prevent in the first place. AB 1501 is a simple solution to a future unmanageable problem. Thank you.
Yes, proceed. Next witness.
Thank you. My name is Diane Friend. I represent the Kings County Farm Bureau. But more than that, today I'm here sitting alone at the table, but behind me, in spirit and mind, are more than 1,000 family farmers, farm workers, agribusinesses, and community citizens that I represent. The demographics in our county vary between age and gender, ethnicity, you know what I'm trying to say, socioeconomic levels, education, but all of those citizens have one thing in common. They're hardworking, they run businesses, and they operate on the presence that laws matter. Kings County is 85% disadvantaged communities, and 80% of the land in our county is designated for production cropland. We also have more cows than people, and the people take care of those cows. These hard-working citizens are reasonable, and they live simply. They live to produce much and to raise their voices when inequities occur. The High-Speed Rail Authority has come through our county and espoused many lies. They have misled the public, they have misrepresented the facts, and with regard to the business plan, the EIR, and land acquisition, they have completely misled the voters of California. One example is when the chairman of the High-Speed Authority spoke to a public of more than 1,000 people at the World Ag Expo and said that only 4,000 acres of farmland would be disrupted by high-speed rail, when in fact it's closer to 100,000. The voice of the voters has been ignored, and not just in Kings County. We get letters, emails, phone calls daily from people all around the state who feel the same way we do. Special interests and political pipe dreams and the almighty dollar have muted the voice of the regular, hardworking citizens of the state and the voice of reason. I was told by a very influential lobbyist in Sacramento, Diane, you have no power. You're dealing with the most powerful business in the world, the railroad. I don't buy that, and I hope you don't either. I appeal to you today to do the right thing. Follow the example of the people of Kings County and the other people around the state and listen to their voice. When the alignment changed from one side of our county to the other side and back to the other side, landowners who were affected and then not affected and then were affected all came together with one voice, united for justice, justice for all, and standing together to keep the High-Speed Rail Authority accountable. Accountable to the voters, accountable to the taxpayers, and accountable to you. In closing, we support Assemblymember Patterson and his Bill 1501, and I ask you, hear the people and listen to the voice of reason, but most of all, listen to the voice of truth. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Is there anyone else in support of this bill? Please come and stand at the microphone. Give your name and affiliation.
Kevin Dayton of Labor Issue Solutions, LLC in Roseville. I'm in support of this bill.
Thank you. Next witness, please.
Hi. Good afternoon. My name is Alan Scott. I'm one of the founding members of the Citizens for California High-Speed Rail Accountability and have been an advocate for high-speed rail, however, not in this matter. I am fully in support of 1501,
Thank you.
Assemblyman Patterson's bill, but I need to say one thing, if you don't mind.
What?
One of the things that's bothering me over the years in reading all these documents in the last 3 years is confusion, ambiguity, uncertainty, physical responsibility, or physical irresponsibility, I'm sorry to say. And because of the following, number one, the pricing history. Started out at $33 billion, went to $44 billion, went to 97 to a low of 97 to a high of 117, back to $68 billion. Who's on first? The Bay Bridge was built 2.5 miles at $1.2 billion. Ended up between 6.5 and 7 billion. Cost overrun factor is around 6.5 to 7%. So I did some numbers. The estimated cost of the high-speed rail is right now at $68 billion. If you do a 3% of cost overrun, you're at $204 billion. If you do it at 4.5% overrun, you're at $306 billion. If you do it at 6%, you go to 408. However, what's really troubling, and not in any business plan, not anywhere in any plans of the high-speed rail, is the interest payments over the years. Right now, you're paying $360 million a year. The first payment was made last July. The next payment was made now for the next 29 years. You're going to borrow more money on no money. You're going to borrow money that you have no other support from whatsoever. The state is in a physical irresponsibility position. You're upside down in a lot of areas with the funded and the unfunded. I support the bill. I support Assemblyman Patterson. And the high-speed rail organization needs to step back, figure it out, and get it right. It is wrong right now. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next witness, name and affiliation, please.
Frank Oliveira. I'm with the Citizens for California High-Speed Rail Accountability. In 2008, Proposition 1A defined the project. It designated money to be used in the project. The project was out in front of everybody and they voted. Along the way, we've asked the High-Speed Rail Authority to comply with the law, to connect the dots, to either build a project appropriately or not build it at all, but they must comply with the law. What's been demonstrated since 2008 is the High-Speed Rail Authority has not gotten it right. The court has concurred with that. I understand that the matter is up for appeal. However, the matters are simple. Any layperson can look at what's on paper and know that they haven't met the statute that they need to meet. They're not accountable. All of that said, the authority has decided to proceed forward spending federal money only with the concurrence of the FRA. This obligates the state to more costs. The money has to come from somewhere, but it's not going to come from Prop 1A. Ultimately, you, the state, the legislature, is going to have to pay that bill. That has to come from somewhere, the general fund, cap and trade. These are all things that have been discussed. Does the state have that money to take away from other projects later because we made a reckless decision to proceed forward spending federal money only that's obligated? So all of that said, this bill, this 1501, is an appropriate oversight for the legislature to monitor the project. Ultimately, I request that you support this bill and move this to the Appropriations Committee so that the Appropriations Committee can do what they do and make sure the numbers are right before this proceeds forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other witnesses in support, are there witnesses in opposition?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Jeremy Smith here on behalf of the State Building and Construction Trades Council. We represent just over 400,000 construction workers who will directly benefit from the economic fad and political pipe dream that is the high-speed rail project. I'm not just here for that today, though. It's unfortunate that these bills keep coming forward to simply throw up obstacles as a way to kill the project. What we should be doing as a legislature and as a state is working together in a bipartisan fashion to address the concerns that occur because of this project and work with the authority to make this project work as smoothly as possible. Instead, what we have are bills like this who, with respect to the proponents, are intended to kill the project, excuse me. We need to ensure that this is done properly and correctly. Oversight is important. However, the High-Speed Rail Authority every year has to come before the budget subcommittees to present on their plans on how they're going to spend the money that the legislature appropriates to them to run the authority. The authority is invested in making sure this works, as are we. Now, it's important to realize that all of these bills, both this one and the several bills over the last few years, have only been about no. None of these bills have an alternative this state needs. By 2050, we're going to have 50 million people in the state. The LAO by itself, on its own, said it's going to cost double this project to create the needed highway lanes, airport runways, and airport terminals. Double. This project is cheaper than that. This needs to happen. It needs to happen for the environmental benefits. It needs to happen to allow people to work and live where they want to work and live and not have to be tethered to a city because of their job. And it needs to happen for the construction jobs this is going to provide. Construction is always the last industry to bounce back from downturns. And this project is the only game in town in terms of state investment in infrastructure. There's no school bond. It's almost ready to run out. We talk about a water bond. I hope that happens. Not sure if it will. We talk about the tunnels. We talk about a transportation bond. None of those things are real yet. What is real is this project. It provides needed jobs to an area of the state that needs jobs the most. And it's an important and critical component to the state's infrastructure needs to meet the known influx of the population that's going to occur in the state by 2050. For those reasons, we oppose this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness, please.
Keith Dunn on behalf of the Association for California High-Speed Trains. I'd like to associate my comments with Mr. Smith's. We represent the employers who put to work the hardworking men and women of the state building trades throughout the valley and the rest of the state. This project is one that continually gets discussed here in this legislature. Since the appropriation was issued July 6th of 2010, we have meetings, we have discussions. The very people here at the table with me participate in those as well. And I understand that there are some very heartfelt emotions tied to this project. We all understand that. It's going to have an impact. Growth does. And we're not unsympathetic to those impositions. They're very real and they're very heartfelt, and I'm sympathetic to those interests. The fact remains, though, that doing nothing is not an option. As Mr. Smith stated, we continue to grow as a state. Building highways would have a larger footprint. It would have a greater environmental impact and would not reach the policy goals that this body has established with reductions of greenhouse gas. It's going to be a tough project, but we're up to the task. We always have been. We've done it time and time again as a state. There are challenges that take place in hearings. There are challenges taking place in the courts that are providing oversight and continual review. As Mr. Smith stated, the High-Speed Rail Authority does come before this body several times a year and present not only business plans but also budget requests. You have that oversight and you will continue to have that. For all those reasons and more, I'm here to oppose 1501. Thank you.
Thank you. Others in opposition, state your name and affiliation, please.
Good afternoon, Justin Fans on behalf of the California State Association of Electrical Workers, the Western State Council of Sheet Metal Workers, and the California State Pipe Trades Council. Just a reminder that the Central Valley is boasting numbers of 25, 30, 40% unemployment. Our folks are ready to go back to work, and we oppose this measure. Thank you.
Sarah Phlox, California Labor Federation, representing both the public, private sector, and the building trades in opposition to this measure. Thank you.
Anyone else in opposition? Seeing none, members of the committee? Mr. Wagner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you all know, I am just substituting today, so I have not had the opportunity to dig into this that I perhaps otherwise would. So I just got to make sure I've got this clear. We are proposing to spend $3 billion in federal matching funds, which, if the appeal either is not successful or the cap and trade funds are not, and they're only $250 million, $250 million, so they're nowhere close to $3 billion. If they're not available, the state is on the hook out of the general fund to the tune of $3 billion. Have I got it right?
Mr. Radger, yes, and I just think that it is important to reiterate matching funds means precisely what the term means, and it is dollar for dollar.
So now I hear from Mr. Smith, who I think is right when he calls it a fad and political pipe dream, but I'll set that aside, that don't worry, the Budget Committee will have an opportunity to address these issues. Again, if I've got this right, now I sit on Budget Sub 4, which deals with state administration. We won't have discretion to say no because the feds will take it from somewhere else, won't they? So what oversight is that the Budget Committee has, other than to say yes, which would be rubber stamping the project? What oversight is there?
It's the reason for the Accountability Act, sir.
Thank you.
Any other comments from members? Mr. Linder.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not sure who'd be the best person to ask this question to, but let's say, for example, maybe the High-Speed Rail Authority might be the best person. If the appeal fails and the bond funds are in fact deemed ineligible, what money will be used to pay for the matching requirement? Where will this come from?
Mr. Fong from High Speed Rail, could you answer that question, please?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, committee members. Russ Fong, Chief Financial Officer for the High Speed Rail. Currently, we have anticipation or looking at Prop 1A funds as an option, but also the proposed in governor's budget of cap and trade funds to actually do the match.
So you're talking about the $200 billion that the governor, $200 million that the governor had proposed in the budget?
Correct. There's also on trailer bill language a proposal to have a reoccurring general revenue stream. With that revenue stream, it gives us some options of perhaps looking at some type of financing to pay the additional amounts.
Okay, so it seems like, what was the number? 3.5 billion, is that what you said? There'd be a huge difference.
It's $2.5 billion in ARA funds and another $928 million in FY10 funds.
Okay, so there will be a significant difference, and I'm curious to see if anybody from this committee would go on record as to be able to vote for spending money on that purpose.
Mr. Wagner, you wanted a follow-up question, and then Mr. Bloom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And since we have the financial folks from High Speed Rail here, is any of this $3 billion match that we're talking about, is that at this point part of the governor's so-called wall of debt?
I'm not sure the specific answer to that question, but what I would like to say, though, is working with the FRA and the $2.5 billion and the $929 billion in FY10 funds, the High Speed Rail is working collaboratively with FRA and the federal government. And one thing I think it's important to point out is all of our expenditures are approved by the federal government before we expend. So it's not like High Speed Rail's spending without their approval before the actual expenditure hits. We're required to pay as far as the grant agreement. We do a quarterly update with the FRA. We're required to notify the FRA of any type of legal action that might prohibit bond funds from coming in. So there is a good partnership, I believe, with the High Speed Rail and the FRA to ensure that we're spending the money wisely, and I think we have their confidence that at the end of the project we'll have some type of a match.
Right, that's with the feds, but my question was specifically with respect to what the governor is calling the wall of debt, and he's making supposedly in his budget year an $11 billion payment. I don't assume that you're getting any of that, so this $3 billion is more than 25% of what the governor's calling the wall of debt. Is that right? And there's no payment to you out of the wall of debt.
Again, I'm not sure of the wall. I wouldn't be able to answer that question.
Well, did you make a request that the governor's office pay you out of when he was divvying up what he'd be paying down on the wall of debt? Did you make a request?
I'm not aware of any request myself. It's just the council.
Mr. Wagner. Mr. Wagner.
Because this isn't
Mr.
debt.
Wagner.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am.
Yes, excuse me. I think we need to stick to the subject, and I think we're asking something of Mr. Fong that he's not involved with, so let's stick to the subject here.
Then do you know whether this $3 billion we'd have to pay would increase the debt the governor is trying to go the other direction and pay down?
Any money, obviously, as you know, that's a debt would increase, obviously, that side of it, so yes.
Thank you. Mr. Bloom.
Well, I'll just be quick. The question that comes up about oversight is an interesting one, but this bill doesn't really provide oversight. As the chair of Budget Sub 3, on which Mr. Patterson serves, and I've heard questions asked by others on budget subcommittees, I'm just assuming it's a rhetorical question when we say, what oversight do we provide? That is what we're here for, and if folks are dissatisfied with the level of oversight, they should ask questions at the budget subcommittee hearings. That's the proper place for oversight, and I don't think it's a topic here today. But I do want to clarify on the funding that the governor's proposal provides for not only $250 million out of cap and trade funds this year, but also proposes $400 million from those funds that were loaned to the general fund last year out of cap and trade. In addition, it's either 30% or a third, 33% of cap and trade funds going forward. That is in the trailer bill language, and if I'm not mistaken, the estimated amount of cap-and-trade funds over the period of time between the upcoming fiscal year, when that third would kick in, and through 2020 is somewhere in the neighborhood of $11 billion, and that is a fairly conservative estimate, deliberately so. So if the Budget Subcommittee and the exercise of its function and its oversight determines that the Governor's proposal is the way to go, then there is more than enough money that would come in over that period of time to cover these funds.
That's correct, and I would also just like to add that with the FRA grant of the $2.5 billion, there is a time limit. We have till September of 2017 to spend those funds, otherwise the state of California will lose it. So, thank you.
Mr. Amiano.
Thank you very much. For Mr. Fong, could you just clarify the tapered match, what that means?
Yeah, so originally when the high-speed rail, a few years ago, it was basic concept, if you pay $1, we would ask the FRA for a reimbursement of 50 cents. The tapered match flips that a little, and it's part of it because of the legal action in Prop 1A. This allows us to pay up to 100% in federal funds first. And the agreement with the FRA, yes, and with the agreement with the FRA, as long as we have that 50% match at the end of the completion of the project, we will meet our obligation. Thank you.
Mr. Frazier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Patterson, also you might remember that I'm the chair of the Accountability and Administrative Review in this Assembly. And so I do have the opportunity to call in when I see projects going sideways or the people's money being not used wisely. So I do take that role very seriously. And so it is on in our sights, and we keep a constant view of it. So I look forward to you sharing your views with me as we go through this process of building high-speed rail.
Mr. Patterson, I'll be voting no on your bill, and I'll be urging my colleagues to do the same. In light of the pending legal issues, these are very confusing times for the high-speed rail project. And although the courts have not yet validated the bond sale, neither have they invalidated the legislature's appropriation, against which existing federal funding agreement has been executed. So, for me, halting this project now while these issues are still being resolved, it would be extraordinarily expensive, and I can't support it for that reason. Would you like to close?
Sure. I'm going to reiterate the fundamentals of the bill, number one. And number two, to remind this committee that it was at the invitation of this committee that I present to you. It is also a part of my request is that you grant passage in order to get this to the Appropriations Committee, who have the expertise, who have the deep financial resources, the analytical resources, to ascertain the complexity and the confusion that has been expressed. I want to point out also that here in testimony was specifically the very reason that I have brought the bill. The High-Speed Rail Authority has said they believe that they can rely on a presumption of general fund revenue if the Prop 1A funds are deemed not to be used. That is why the bill is in front of you. It should not be the role of a state agency to decide where and when to spend money from the general fund. And yet that is precisely the action that is being taken. By virtue of the use of the federal money up front, it obligates this state to match and to pay it back. This ability is granted to elected members of the legislature. It is so that we can hold these kinds of large projects to high levels of scrutiny and accountability for the spending decisions that are made. By proceeding using federal dollars that must eventually be matched by the state. We are permitting non-elected members of a state agency to make massive financial decisions that will impact future spending decisions by this legislature. You are limiting your options, not expanding them, by rejecting this bill. Let me reiterate. The California High-Speed Rail Funding Accountability Act is not about overturning the high-speed rail project, but it is an attempt to initiate the kind of oversight and accountability that we would bring to any major project of this magnitude. And it is also necessary to rein in an agency that is spending money. I contend it is a reckless expenditure. It is taxpayer money requiring absolutely the match, and it is doing so without explicit legislative approval. Members, we must do our oversight responsibility so that it is not thrust upon us by the courts. There is a reason why the courts have engaged and made the rulings that they have made, because upon the surface of it, they have discovered that the authority has not been complying with Prop 1A language. Let me speak to the class of 12 for a minute. Those of you who will be with me, hopefully, for the next 12 years. Members, we must be doing what is right currently, presently, right now. We will either be celebrating that we have done it right, that we have worked together, that we have called into responsible behavior organizations established by the voters and supposed to be overseen by the legislature, or we're going to be explaining to voters why we did not do our due diligence on their behalf, as costs spiral, as a project perhaps continues in legal difficulty. And so I would like to say there is no danger in ensuring oversight and responsible actions. This bill will do just that by restoring integrity of the legislative process and ensuring that spending decisions are made by elected members of the legislature who can be held accountable by their constituents. Long after the High-Speed Rail Authority ends its responsibility, there will be some of us who will be left to explain what went wrong. I'm suggesting that if we do the due diligence and if we do this up front and make the tough decisions now, we can have a much higher prospect of delivering a project that the voters voted for, and a project that has not exploded in cost, and a project that has been responsive to the agricultural and private property interests that have been expressed. It is my personal appeal. Colleagues and members, I am asking that you allow this bill to take the next step. Members, the size, the scope, the complexity of the finances involved here, the uncertainty by the introduction of the legitimate matters pending before the court, and the spending history, and the business plan history of the authority warrant a full financial review by a fiscal committee. Your actions to pass this to appropriations does precisely that. And so for those reasons, members, I ask that you approve and send along to the Appropriations Committee AB 1501. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblymember. Is there a motion?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Madam Secretary, could you call the roll, please?
Motions to pass to appropriations. Lowenthal?
No.
Lowenthal, no. Linder?
Aye.
Linder, aye. Ashajian? Ashajian, aye. Amiano?
No.
Amiano, no. Bloom?
No.
Bloom, no. Fonta? Buchanan? Buchanan, no. Daly?
No.
Daly, no. Frazier?
No.
Frazier, no. Gatto? Gatto, no. Holden? Holden, no. Logue? Wagner? Wagner, aye. Nazarian? Patterson?
Aye.
Patterson, aye. Quicksilva?
Mr. Patterson, it's 4 to 8. We can put the bill on call. We have several members not here.
Thank
The
you,
bill is
members.
on
I do
call.
appreciate your consideration of the bill, and appreciate that consideration,
And
and
thank
hope you could pass it.
Thank you for your testimony.